November 15, 1942. Iron Bottom Sound. 0:06 hours. The night is black, not the soft darkness of a moonlit sky, but a depthless void where the horizon vanishes and the sea becomes an ink-drenched plain. The air is warm, heavy with the thick humidity of the South Pacific, and the faint scent of fuel oil drifts across the water like an omen. Aboard the USS Washington, BB-56, the bridge is a dim constellation of red lights, glowing weakly against the dark. Men speak in hushed tones. Boots scuff lightly across steel decks. The vibration of the massive propellers thrums through the ship's bones, a steady rhythm beneath the war drums of the sea. Inside the foretop, the elevated command center perched above Washington's superstructure, Rear Admiral Willis Augustus Ching Lee, tall, composed, and wearing thick-rimmed glasses, leans forward over the radar plot table. He barely blinks. The green sweep of the SG radar, the most advanced surface search radar in the world, rolls across the circular screen. Its silent pulse touches distant shapes invisible to the naked eye. You can almost hear his thoughts in the tension, in the stillness of his posture. Somewhere out there, they're coming. 20 miles west of Salvo Island, the American battleship moves like a giant through the darkness, unseen, unheard. Her escort, the battleship USS South Dakota, steams off her port beam, though she is a shadow, not a silhouette. At this hour, nothing has shape or form unless the radar makes it so. The waters around them hold ghosts, the battered hulls of cruisers and destroyers sunk in the previous night's brutal fighting. The Americans have named this place Iron Bottom Sound for a reason. Beneath Washington's keel, a steel graveyard lies silent and cold. Tonight, the Japanese are coming again. A powerful bombardment force, Kirishima, Atago, Takaro, destroyers, and a screen of torpedo boats, has slipped down the slot, intent on finishing what earlier battles failed to do, pulverize Henderson Field and crush the American foothold on Guadalcanal. But this night will be different. This night, for the first time in naval history, a battleship will fight not by eyesight or searchlights, not by flares or moonlight, but by something invisible, electronic eyes that pierce the dark. The stillness before impact. Far below the foretop, Washington's main battery turrets brood in the night. 3 massive triple-gun houses, each holding 16-inch or 45 caliber rifles, are locked fore and aft. In turret 1, the crew stands ready, faces smeared with grime, sleeves rolled, sweat trickling down temples despite the circulating fans. You can feel the nervous energy in the turret officer, Lieutenant James Jim Milliken. He taps one finger on the spotting scope mount, listening to updates crackle over the telephone circuit. "Stand by, boys," he mutters. "Stand by." The turret shudders slightly as power rams adjust elevation. Deep within the ship, powder-handling crews wait beside silk bags of propellant and shells weighing 2,700 pounds each, armor-piercing giants designed to punch through the thick belts of enemy capital ships. Everywhere, the crew moves with choreographed precision. The Washington is a battleship in her prime. 35,000 tons. 212,000 horsepower. 27 knots. 9 guns capable of firing over 20 miles. And tonight, she has a commander who understands exactly what makes her deadly. Admiral Willis Lee, the right man at the right moment. Admiral Lee is not a typical surface warfare officer of his era. He does not believe in fighting the night as the Japanese do, with instinct, intuition, or raw courage. Instead, he trusts mathematics, training, technology. He is a former Olympic pistol shooter, the kind of man who can calmly place bullets through a target in near darkness. To him, precision is not an aspiration. It is the natural state of a disciplined mind. From the moment he arrived in the Pacific, Washington's crew whispered about him with admiration. Heavy gun crews claim he can read firing tables as easily as a cook reads a recipe. Radar operators swear he understands the SG set better than the technicians who built it. This is the first time a U.S. fleet admiral will command a battleship in combat using complete radar-directed fire control. And Lee is ready. Contact. At 0:10 hours, Petty Officer Ray Allen, hunched over the glowing SG radar screen, stiffens. New contacts bearing 345. Range 18,000 yards. Multiple returns. The words run through CIC, the Combat Information Center, like electricity. 18,000 yards. 10 miles. Well beyond visual range. And completely invisible. The radar traces blink steadily, unwavering, large ships, moving fast, closing. Japanese column, Lee says quietly. They're here. No searchlights. No star shells. No moon. Nothing but the green ghostly arcs of the radar confirming what no American officer can see with his eyes. The tracking teams go to work. Plotters draw grease pencil lines across transparent boards. Voice tubes carry updates to the gunnery director perched high above. Fire control radars begin to hum. Through the bridge windows, the night remains perfectly black. Even at 10,000 yards, you could stare straight at Kirishima and never know she was there. Unless you had radar. The Japanese approach. Far across the water, the Imperial Japanese Navy moves confidently toward its objective. For months, Japanese night warfare doctrine has proven superior, brutally so. Navigating by lookouts with exceptional eyesight, they have slaughtered Allied cruisers and destroyers in nocturnal battles since Salvo Island. Aboard Kirishima, the crew stands ready to bombard Henderson Field. Her 14-inch guns have already shelled Guadalcanal before. Tonight they expect little opposition. After all, the American surface fleet has been hammered for days. They believe the darkness is their ally. They do not yet know the Americans bring something new. Washington and South Dakota, the formation. Washington and South Dakota move in a line-ahead formation, destroyers having peeled away after earlier torpedo attacks and clashes with Japanese screening vessels. Many of those American destroyers are now burning or sinking. Lee's 2 battleships are alone. Washington leads. South Dakota follows. They are the last wall between the Japanese and Henderson Field. Lee knows Japanese destroyers and cruisers are expert night fighters. He expects torpedoes, lots of them. He expects chaos. But what he cannot know is that South Dakota will soon face electrical failures, radio outages, and a sudden cascade of calamities that will leave Washington standing alone in the decisive moments to come. For now, the formation holds steady as the radar picture sharpens. The moment the future arrives. Admiral, target separation confirmed, reports Lieutenant Commander Edwin Hooper in CIC. Large contact at center. Likely a battleship. Lee adjusts his glasses. That'll be Kirishima. He turns to Gunnery Officer Commander Henry Hank Bardshaw. Prepare main battery. Do not illuminate. Radar fire control only. Bardshaw nods sharply. For the first time in history, a battleship will attempt to fire a full salvo at another battleship without ever seeing it. Deep in Washington's armored citadel, the Mark 8 fire control radar pulses quietly. Its narrow beam locks onto a target across 10,000 yards of black water, measuring range with yard-by-yard precision. In the gunnery director high atop the ship, Lieutenant Ralph Hopkins watches the instruments come alive. Solution developing. Stand by. The fire control computers, the mechanical brain of the ship, begin to compute elevation, deflection, target course, speed, bearing. This is not intuition. This is physics. The Japanese open fire first. At 0:16 hours, orange flashes strobe across the water. Kirishima's main battery fires. Japanese shells roar overhead, their sound reaching Washington seconds later as deep, distant thunder. The night lights up faintly with the distant muzzle flashes, but it's not enough to reveal their position. On Washington's bridge, no one flinches. The shells land wide, far wide. Kirishima is firing blind. She has no radar. She has only guesswork. Washington has certainty. Main battery ready, Bardshaw announces. Lee exhales slowly. Very well. Engage. The first salvo. You feel the ship tense, as if inhaling. Voices quiet. Metal creaks softly. The deck seems to brace itself. Stand by. A heartbeat. Commence firing. The world explodes. All 3 forward turrets cough flame into the abyss. The deck shudders violently, windows rattle, dust shakes loose from bulkheads. A wave of hot, concussive air slams outward as 9 16-inch rifles release their fury. The shells scream away into the dark, each one a steel titan carrying enough power to tear through a battleship's armored heart. The gun smoke rolls over the deck, thick and acrid, carried off by a warm Pacific wind. The radar track remains steady. Kirishima is still there. And she is about to feel every bit of American industrial might. The spotters speak. "Good straddle," someone calls from the director tower. "She's turning, still closing." Badshaw adjusts the firing solution. "Continue firing." The night erupts again, and again. Washington unleashes a storm of heavy shells, each salvo guided not by the human eye, but by radar beams slicing invisibly across the water. In the distance, Kirishima can finally see the gigantic orange blossoms of Washington's muzzle flashes. But by the time she sees them, it is already too late. 2 shells smash into her superstructure, tearing through armor, severing steering controls, and igniting fires. Another shell plunges into the aft engine room, crippling her machinery. Kirishima begins to writhe in the water, unable to maintain course. The Japanese are stunned. Their night advantage is gone. Their doctrine is useless. A new kind of warfare has arrived. And the battle has only just begun. The thunder of Washington's guns fades into rolling echoes across Iron Bottom Sound, but the air still trembles with the violence of each salvo. Smoke drifts along the battleship's decks, illuminated faintly by the orange glow of leftover embers inside the gun barrels. The men aboard Washington can't see their enemy, but they can feel her suffering in every radar update and every shifting echo on the Mark 8 display. The Japanese have finally realized they are under attack by a battleship they cannot see. And now the darkness begins to fight back. South Dakota in trouble. 0:22 hours. Behind Washington, the battleship USS South Dakota starts to drift strangely in formation. At first, only a few sharp-eyed officers on the Washington's aft stations notice her silhouette briefly flicker against distant muzzle flashes. Then the reports begin to filter in. South Dakota lost her radios again. Electrical bus shorted out. She's blind. She's taking more fire. Cruisers on her. The details come in pieces. A flood of electrical failures, overloaded circuits, the sudden death of her radar, communications, and even some of her gun directors. To the Japanese, South Dakota suddenly becomes the only visible American ship on the water. They pounce. Like wolves, Japanese cruisers Atago and Takaro sweep their searchlights across the dark waves until they catch South Dakota's towering hull. Bright white beams lock onto her superstructure. An instant later, torrents of 8-inch shells come crashing down. Aboard Washington, men watch helplessly as the ship behind them becomes a blazing silhouette, every hit a spark, every spark a scream of steel. South Dakota's drawing their fire, someone whispers. "She's lit up like a Christmas tree," another mutters, voice tight. But Vice Admiral Lee does not break. He hears the chaos behind him. He knows the Japanese have concentrated on the wrong battleship. "Maintain course," Lee orders calmly. Washington will not illuminate. Not for any reason. He refuses to reveal himself. This moment, this sliver of darkness hiding his 35,000-ton warship, will decide the fate of the night. Washington's invisibility is a weapon. It is something the Japanese do not expect. In every previous night battle, American ships tried to use searchlights or star shells. They tried to fight the Japanese their way, by sight, by instinct, by reflex. Tonight, Lee discards all that. Washington moves as a ghost ship, no lights, no illumination rounds, no silhouettes, no visible signature. The only thing that sees for her is radar. And radar is enough. The moment Kirishima realizes she is dying. 0:25 hours. Another salvo crashes into the Japanese battleship Kirishima, and this time Washington's crew hears something different, an echoing metallic shriek across the water, the unmistakable sound of a massive ship taking structural damage. The radar plotters watch the blips shift abruptly. She's slowing. She's turning uncontrolled, rudder jammed. Hits confirmed. At least 3 major fires. Kirishima's problems multiply with each minute. Asterisk steering gear destroyed. Asterisk port engine room flooding. Asterisk fire in the superstructure. Asterisk forward turrets damaged. Asterisk communication severed. She tries to circle away, but the wheelhouse is a mess of sparks and smoke. Damage reports flood the Japanese bridge faster than the officers can react. Still, her crew fights with fierce desperation. They fire blindly at muzzle flashes glimpsed between smoke clouds. They change course by engine power alone. They try, valiantly, to save the ship that once bombarded Chinese cities and escorted Congo through half the Pacific. But they are fighting a phantom. They are firing at a ship they still cannot see. And Washington's radar picture only grows clearer. The killing solution. Back aboard Washington, Gunnery Officer Badshaw works like a maestro conducting a symphony of steel and fire. His voice is steady, precise. Correct deflection. Reload and fire when ready. The fire control computers, whirring gears, rotating cams, mechanical dials, calculate the next shot with cold perfection. Lieutenant Ralph Hopkins peers through his director optics, seeing nothing but void. Yet the data streaming into his instruments is flawless. Solution locked. Enemy battleship bearing 028. Range 8,000 yards. 8,000 yards. Only 4 miles. A battleship duel has come to knife fighting distance, but only one combatant has vision. Fire, Badshaw orders. 9 more 16-inch rifles speak. The concussion rocks Washington from bow to stern. Shockwaves ripple across the water like miniature tidal waves. The men in turret crews feel the heat on their faces, the vibration through their bones. Then the spotters confirm. Direct hit on the superstructure. Second hit aft. She's burning bright. Even without visibility, even without eyes, Washington's gunners are carving Kirishima apart. 7 minutes into continuous fire, the Japanese battleship is mortally wounded. The Japanese realize the truth. Inside Kirishima's bridge, smoke fills the air. Splinters of steel rain down. Fires dance along the deck like angry spirits. Men shout orders, some coughing, some wounded. And then someone sees it, just barely, far across the water. A faint, flickering flash. A muzzle blast. "Battleship!" a voice screams. An American battleship, right there. Panic sweeps through the bridge. It is not a cruiser. Not a destroyer. Not a distant bombardment group. A battleship is hitting them with perfect accuracy in total darkness. "Congo?" someone asks wildly. "Yamato? Who is it?" They do not know the name Washington, but they know the hand that strikes them. This is not guesswork. This is not luck. This is something new, something terrifying. A machine that sees in the dark. Electronic warfare has arrived. Washington takes command of the night. 032 hours. South Dakota is battered, burning, limping through the dark, but alive. Kirishima is spiraling helplessly, fires reaching toward her bridge. Cruiser escorts attempt to intervene, but only get radar-guided secondary fire in return. The Americans land hits without ever illuminating. For the first time in the Pacific War, Japanese commanders realize their night fighting supremacy is over. The tide has turned. And the quiet man with the thick-rimmed glasses standing aboard Washington made it happen. Admiral Willis Lee keeps his voice low, almost gentle. "Maintain fire. End it." His radar operators nod, hands steady, eyes glowing in the green light of their screens. The ghost ship continues her approach. Kirishima's end is approaching swiftly. The Japanese battleship Kirishima staggers through the black waters of Iron Bottom Sound, burning, listing, helpless. The invisible American giant continues to close the distance, radar beams sweeping the sea with cold precision. Aboard Washington, the crew senses the shift in momentum. The battle is no longer a chaotic melee. It is an execution. The final approach. 033 hours. The darkness is unbroken, but the air around Washington tastes different now, filled with powder smoke and hot metal. The concussion from each salvo vibrates through her armored deck plates like distant thunder trapped beneath a storm. Admiral Lee keeps Washington on course, never accelerating recklessly, never revealing himself to Japanese searchlights. His silhouette remains swallowed in the night. "What's our range?" he asks calmly. 6,000 yards and closing, Lieutenant Hooper replies. Enemy battleship losing speed, radar cross-section reduced. "She's hurting, sir." Hank Badshaw adjusts the firing solution again. He barely hears the alarms and distant explosions that mark South Dakota's ongoing punishment behind them. "We've got her," "Admiral," he says with a quiet finality. Lee only nods. Below them, the ship feels alive, muscle and machinery working in harmony. One wrong decision could expose her. One spotlight could end everything. But Washington remains dark, silent, unseen. The only warning Kirishima has is the blinding flash of Washington's guns, and by then, death is already on the way. Inside the turrets, the human engine. Deep inside turret 1, the men work with relentless rhythm. Load AP. Powder bags in. Close breach. Voices echo through the armored chamber as lift elevators deliver 2,700-pound shells and 535-pound powder bags. Sweat soaks through t-shirts. The air is hot, metallic, tasting of grease and cordite. The turret chief, Chief Gunner's Mate Charles "Red" Williams, roars over the noise. "Stand by for next salvo." On the Admiral's mark. No one can see the target. They rely entirely on the voice circuits, the remote commands from the fire director high above. Then the order cuts through the turret like a blade. "Commence firing." The world detonates. The massive triple-gun turret shakes with primal ferocity. Men feel pressure slam into their chests. Dust and rust flakes fall like rain. Heat blasts across their faces in an instant flash. Before the concussion fades, they are already loading again. This is the heartbeat of the Washington: pound, load, fire, pound, load, fire. 7 minutes of relentless precision. The sense of impact. A sailor on Washington's starboard wing remembers hearing it, not seeing, not feeling, but hearing the moment Kirishima's armor finally gave way. It was a distant, hollow thunder, different from Washington's guns. A deeper sound. A dying sound. Something massive was breaking open far across the water. Spotter reports confirm. Hit near the forward turrets. Secondary explosions on the port side. She's turning in circles, rudder's gone. Bardshar nods to his fire control team. "Keep it steady. She's dead in the water, but we finished the job." His voice carries no anger. Only duty. Aboard Kirishima, the fires spread. The Japanese crew fights to keep their ship alive. Engineers waist-deep in boiling water try desperately to restart flooded machinery. Damage control teams drag fire hoses through smoke-clogged passageways. Officers shout orders into dead phones. Runners sprint through burning compartments to carry messages by hand. But Washington's shells have achieved what few battleships ever accomplish: they have reached the interior. A turret captain screams as a hit tears through the barbette above him. A ruptured steam line scalds gunners in turret 3. Flooding surges through ammunition stores. Worse, the main steering room, Kirishima's brain, has been obliterated by a direct hit. She can turn only in wide circles now, blindly, helplessly, while flames illuminate her decks in flickering orange. To the Japanese, the sky above Washington is still pitch black. She has fired dozens of 16-inch shells, and they still cannot see her. Fear grips the Kirishima bridge. This enemy, it fights without eyes, one officer murmurs. Another responds, shaking, "No. It has eyes we cannot see." The 7-minute barrage. Washington's logbooks and gunnery records will later confirm the astonishing truth. In 7 minutes, Washington fired 75 rounds of 16-inch ammunition. At least 9 hit Kirishima. Some experts believe as many as 20 struck. But the number barely matters. What matters is the effect: Kirishima is dying. At 0:37 hours, her list grows to 10 degrees. By 0:40 it is 15. Fires lash up her pagoda mast like torches in the wind. Magazines threaten to ignite. Ammunition cooks off in sporadic bursts. Japanese destroyers race toward her to assist, but they cannot stop what has already begun. They launch torpedoes blindly, hoping to scare Washington off, but Washington, invisible in the night, glides on untouched. Washington's silence is terrifying. Washington continues firing until the radar returns show unmistakable signs. Kirishima's speed drops to 0. Her turning circle tightens uncontrollably. Her cross-section weakens as water fills her. Her heat signature, detected indirectly through fire control behavior, peaks with intensity. Then Bardshar calls out. Target is slipping beneath the radar horizon. She's finished. He lowers his headphones slowly, as if ending a conversation rather than a battle. For the first time in nearly 8 minutes, Washington falls silent. The ocean around her grows still, like a great animal holding its breath. The Americans wait for a counterattack that never comes. South Dakota limps away. The Japanese cruisers withdraw. Destroyers scatter. The night, once filled with explosions, now holds only the soft hiss of distant waves and the faint crackling of Kiroshima's burning wreck. Washington remains dark, unscarred, untouched. Not a single Japanese shell ever found her. Kiroshima's last moments. 0:52 hours. Kiroshima's captain gives the order to abandon ship. Men climb down fire-blackened ladders into the oily water. Others jump from the tilting deck as the list grows past 20 degrees. Flames reflect on the surface like molten gold. A few sailors turn back and salute their ship, once a proud battle wagon of the Imperial Navy. At 1:25 hours, Kirishima capsizes and sinks stern first, taking 212 crewmen with her into the abyss of Iron Bottom Sound. Washington's radar registers the moment she vanishes. Admiral Lee watches the screen, expression unreadable. He does not celebrate. He simply exhales and removes his glasses to wipe the fog from them. "Cease tracking," he orders softly. The first radar-directed battleship kill in world history is complete. Kirishima slips beneath the waves and is gone, swallowed by the black water of Iron Bottom Sound. Against all expectations, the battle has ended not with a close-quarters slugfest of searchlights and chaos, but with a silent, invisible execution. Washington drifts forward through the darkness, still unseen, her bow cutting smooth lines across the calm midnight sea. The men aboard her know what they've done, but the reality hasn't fully settled in. They still expect torpedoes, cruisers, destroyers, something. No one believes the Imperial Japanese Navy could simply vanish into the night. But this is exactly what has happened. The stillness after the fury. 1:30 hours. For the first time in an hour, Washington's decks are quiet. No shouting. No alarms. Just the steady thrum of the propulsion shafts and the faint hiss of warm Pacific wind. The great battleship has just sunk a capital ship in one-on-one combat, something no American battleship has done before, and something no American battleship will ever do again. Yet the crew doesn't cheer. They listen. Every man aboard is waiting for the inevitable counterblow. On the bridge, an ensign whispers, "This is too quiet, sir." Admiral Lee folds his arms. The Japanese know they've lost the night. They'll regroup at daylight. And by then, we'll be far away. His voice carries an absolute steadiness. Washington did not just survive the battle. She dominated it. The enemy fleet fades. To the west, the remaining Japanese destroyers race to pick up survivors from Kirishima. Their commander faces an impossible dilemma. Pursue the unseen American battleship and risk annihilation. Or save the men thrashing in the burning water. He chooses humanity. Searchlights flicker on dozens of times over the next hour, sweeping the sea for floating sailors, but those searchlights never sweep toward Washington's position. The Japanese still don't know where she is. They only know that something in the dark destroyed their battleship with perfect accuracy. One of the Japanese destroyer captains writes later in his report, "We could find no enemy ship. Only the flashes of the guns, and then nothing. They fought like ghosts." South Dakota's painful retreat. A few miles away, USS South Dakota limps through the darkness, her decks riddled, fires dying out, the acrid smell of smoke lingering on every surface. She has taken 26 major hits, 8-inch shells, 5-inch bursts, and countless fragmentation strikes. And yet, miraculously, she still floats. Washington's radar tracks her automatically, one friend in the dark, one survivor of the beating. Lee orders the two battleships to rendezvous. "Signal South Dakota," he says. "Ask her if she needs assistance." The reply comes slowly, patched through one of her few remaining working circuits. "We can make revolutions." Proceeding south. Her silhouette is barely visible, a wounded Titan trailing black scars across the water. But she is alive. And she is alive because Washington drew no fire. The crew finally breathes. On Washington's decks, men start to emerge from battle stations. The tension breaks piece by piece, small laughs, deep exhales, claps on the back. In Turret 1, Red William slumps against the bulkhead and says, "Boys, I think we just killed a battleship." Someone else responds, incredulous, "In the dark. Without seeing the damn thing." Far below the armored citadel, the boiler rooms cool slowly as engineers stabilize the propulsion systems. Some remove their heat-soaked gloves and joke about letting the big girl rest after punching someone in the jaw. But when they recall the moment the first shells left the barrels, the concussive blast, the shockwave, they fall silent again. "Hell of a fight," one says. "No," another replies quietly. "More like a hunt." The command decides its next move. Admiral Lee gathers his officers in the dimly lit Combat Information Center. Radar screens glow softly. Grease pencil marks trace the paths of ships now long gone. "Gentlemen," he begins, "the Japanese will not allow this defeat to stand. At dawn, we expect air attack from Rabaul and Shortland Islands." He pauses. "But tonight, we did what no battleship has done before." There's no pride in his tone, only recognition of a turning point. The officers look around, realizing the same truth. They have crossed a threshold. Naval warfare will never be the same. One of the junior officers, Lieutenant Hooper, clears his throat. "Sir, we fought without eyes." Lee shakes his head. "No, Lieutenant. We fought with new eyes." He taps the SG radar console gently with 2 fingers. "This is the beginning." The Japanese flee the sound. By 2 o'clock hours, the enemy fleet has retreated entirely. The Japanese cruisers Atago and Takaro pour on speed northward, their wounded pride hidden behind rigid discipline. Destroyers Udachi, Asagumo, and others struggle to collect survivors. But they no longer hunt American ships. They run from them. Kirishima's loss is devastating. The Imperial Navy has never lost a battleship in surface combat to a single opponent, not since the Russo-Japanese War. And certainly not at night. And never to an enemy they couldn't see. Washington leaves the graveyard. At 2:30, Admiral Lee gives the order. "All engines ahead. We are withdrawing." Washington turns south, gliding silently past the corpses of ships lost in the previous nights, destroyers, cruisers, transports, all resting on the ocean floor. Iron Bottom Sound earns its name again. The water is eerily calm now, as if the sea itself has decided the battle is over. The only hint of what transpired is the faint smell of smoke carried on the wind. As Washington slips through the darkness, a sailor on the starboard lookout mutters a final thought. "We came in blind, and left them blind." First light. Around 4:45 hours, a thin orange halo appears on the eastern horizon. Dawn begins its slow crawl across the Pacific. And now the truth is visible. The sky colors the sea blood red for a moment. Smoke plumes linger in the distance, evidence of burning ships, dying fires, and shattered steel. Washington remains pristine. No scars. No holes. No hits. A perfect battleship, untouched by the night's violence. It is only then, only at sunrise, that the crew truly understands the magnitude of what they have done. They defeated an enemy battleship in 7 minutes. In darkness. With 0 casualties. The age of radar has arrived. And the world will never go back. Dawn spreads across the Pacific like a slow, deliberate revelation. With the darkness peeled back, Iron Bottom Sound no longer hides its secrets. Smoke hangs low over the horizon. The faint shimmer of burning oil drifts across the waves. And somewhere beneath that glassy surface, the hull of the Imperial Japanese Navy's Kirishima rests in eternal silence. Washington and South Dakota press southward, survivors of a night that rewrote naval warfare. But the story is not over. The morning light doesn't just reveal the battle's aftermath, it exposes the meaning of what has happened. The Dawn After Action Report. Aboard Washington, communications officers finally restore their primary networks. The ship's internal phones ring with constant traffic, damage reports, position checks, ammunition tallies, and radar recalibrations. In CIC, Lee's staff begins compiling the first official account of what transpired in the dark hours. Main battery fired 117 rounds, a gunnery clerk reports, flipping through carbon copy sheets still warm from the automatic typewriter. Bardshah, standing nearby, reads over the data. 75 rounds in the first 7 minutes, the clerk adds, followed by 42 more until targets ceased to exist. Hits? Lee asks quietly. Minimum 9 confirmed radar-derived structural changes, sir. But the splashes were unobservable. He means exactly what he says. They couldn't see anything. Every confirmed strike comes from analysis of shifting radar shadows, deflection changes, and fire pattern responses, technology interpreting destruction. Lee nods. History may count fewer hits, he says, but history doesn't matter tonight. Hiroshima is gone. There is no bravado in his tone. Just fact. A new kind of confidence. On the main deck, sailors watch the sunrise paint the steel hull in warm colors. Their exhaustion is visible now, slumped shoulders, grease-streaked cheeks, eyes puffy from smoke and strain. Yet the mood is unmistakably changing. Crewmen grin nervously, as if realizing for the first time that they themselves survived the night. One fireman leans against a ventilator pipe and mutters, "Boys, we didn't just win. We changed the whole damn rulebook." Another replies, "Yeah. From now on, we fight our way." The sentiment spreads quickly, carried from turret crews to lookouts to engineers. The Japanese night advantage is broken. The Americans just stole the darkness. The first enemy air signals. 7:10 hours. A lookout aboard Washington shouts, "Aircraft bearing 085, high altitude." Heads snap up. Officers grab binoculars. Anti-aircraft crews scramble to their stations. Lee orders. Set condition 1. Ready all guns. But after several tense seconds, radar operators confirm the contacts are far off, scouting aircraft circling above the wreckage of last night's battle, searching for the American fleet that has already withdrawn. Japanese don't know where we are, a radar man says. Lee nods to himself. Good. Let them guess. Guadalcanal sends word. At 7:42, a message crackles over the TBS radio. Henderson Field to Task Force 64. We heard the guns. Tell us, who was out there with you? Lee's radio man looks uncertain. Transmit, Lee says. Washington and South Dakota. There is a long pause. Then? Well done. The Marines salute you. A quiet wave of pride moves through the ship. The men aboard Washington hadn't thought about it, not during the battle, not during the retreat, but because of their victory, the airfield still stands. The infantry still holds the line. The island is still American. And the campaign for Guadalcanal, bleeding, grinding, desperate, is now tipping. The Japanese confront the unthinkable. Meanwhile, far north at Truk Lagoon, dispatches reach Japanese high command. In a dimly lit operations room, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto studies the reports with a grim expression. Hiroshima, sunk, an officer reads. Yamamoto's face darkens. By aircraft? No, sir. By battleship. How many? 1, sir. A silence as heavy as stone fills the room. Yamamoto slowly closes his eyes. He knows instantly what it means. The Americans have mastered radar-guided night combat. The Japanese doctrine, built over decades, tested through dozens of night victories, has been overturned in a single engagement. He whispers. Electronic eyes? I warned them. He had warned them. Repeatedly. Technology changes war. Not willpower. Not courage. Technology. Now, the truth stands before him like a judgment. He cannot unring this bell. Washington's crew sees their handiwork. Around 8:25, the debris field begins to drift past Washington's starboard side, flotsam carried south by the currents. Charred timbers. Patches of oil. Small fragments of steel plating. A shattered life ring with Japanese characters scorched into it. The men fall silent as the waves roll lumps of twisted wreckage across the surface. They know ships die this way. They know sailors drown this way. Many aboard Washington have fought since 1941, Pearl Harbor, the Solomons, the Atlantic. They are warriors, not butchers. Several bow their heads. Someone whispers a quiet prayer, for friend and foe alike. War is cruel. This one is no different. But there is a universal respect for the sailors who fought on Hiroshima. They stayed at their guns until their ship capsized. They fought with honor. Lee himself steps onto the bridge wing and watches the debris move past. We may respect them, he says softly, but we must defeat them. A simple truth. A heavy one. South Dakota falls into formation. At 9:04, the battered silhouette of South Dakota approaches, her superstructure blackened, her radar arrays scorched, her mast bent. But her engines still turn, and her crew still stands their watches. Washington signals across the waves. "Good to see you." South Dakota signals back. "Good to be seen." The pair of battleships settle into formation, moving together like wounded giants, one untouched, one scarred, but both victorious. Aboard South Dakota, dozens of wounded rest below decks. Medics work non-stop, treating burns, shrapnel wounds, and trauma from concussive blasts. Many of her crew had fought in darkness without radar, without direction, with nothing but discipline and endurance to keep them alive. Washington's men understand this. As the two ships sail side by side, sailors from both crews stand along the rails, exchanging silent nods across the gap of blue water. No words needed. Last night, they saved each other. Admiral Lee's calm. Back in CIC, Lee begins preparing the full report for Admiral William Halsey. He dictates with quiet precision. Washington engaged Kirishima at radar-determined ranges between 8,400 and 9,200 yards, achieving at least 9 heavy hits. Enemy battleship lost rudder, experienced multiple internal explosions, and was observed via radar to cease movement at approximately 0:37 hours. He pauses. South Dakota drew the attention of the enemy's cruiser force, saved Washington from illumination. He pauses again, longer this time. And Washington made full use of radar systems to prosecute enemy targets with decisive effect. An officer watching him says nothing, but thinks to himself. He knows what he's done. But he also knows this is only the beginning. The future takes shape. By late morning, the two battleships push farther away from the battle zone, heading for safer waters to regroup and repair. But the significance of the night lingers with them. From now on, American ships will fight with radar. Fire control will become a science, not an art. Night will no longer belong to the Japanese. Battleships will no longer rely on eyesight. The Pacific War's tide will begin to turn. The ghostly duel in Iron Bottom Sound has changed everything. And every man aboard Washington senses it, even if they can't yet articulate it. The age of the electronic battlefield has begun. The cruisers that never came. As Washington and South Dakota withdraw from Iron Bottom Sound, another fact becomes clear, one that historians will debate for decades. Vice Admiral Nobutake Kondo, commander of the Japanese strike force, never fully realized what hit him. His cruisers Tone and Chikuma, still somewhere beyond radar range, continue their search pattern through the mid-morning haze. They expect to find 2 crippled American battleships, or at the very least a fleeing, burning wreck. They find nothing. Not a single damaged enemy ship. The American force, so small on paper, had not been destroyed. It had simply slipped back into the shadows after rewriting the rules. Tone's reconnaissance floatplanes return with more questions than answers. Enemy whereabouts unknown. American battleship not located. No visual signs of withdrawal. Kondo studies the reports with a frown so deep it seems etched in stone. He knows reality when he sees it, even when others deny it. A single American battleship with radar had shattered his formation, crippled his flight, and sunk a capital ship under the cover of darkness. He withdraws northward, his mission incomplete, his confidence shaken. For the first time, the Japanese Navy understands that night no longer guarantees safety. And for the first time, the American Navy realizes its machines, its electronic eyes, have become weapons more decisive than steel alone. The aftermath of Kirishima. Far below the surface, Kirishima lies at a steep angle, her hull buried in silt 3,800 feet beneath Iron Bottom Sound. Inside her shattered engine rooms and ruptured magazines lie nearly 300 Japanese sailors, men whose names remain carved today on memorials in Japan, and whose last moments were spent fighting a battle they could not fully see. Her wreck is upright, unusual for a capsized battleship, her turrets blown free from their mountings by internal explosions. The scars of Washington's 16-inch shells are unmistakable, their impact zones ripped open like craters. Silent now. But eternal. When divers eventually survey her decades later, they will find the echoes of that 7-minute barrage still etched in her steel. Henderson Field hears the news. Back on Guadalcanal, Marines gather around field radios as word spreads. Kirishima is gone, a radioman says with cautious pride. For weary infantrymen entrenched in the mud and heat, this is more than naval trivia. This is the removal of a direct threat, the battleship that should have shelled Henderson Field into oblivion. This is survival. A Marine captain wipes soot from his cracked helmet and nods. Whoever those sailors were, he mutters, "We owe them a beer. Or 1,000. Another Marine, leaning on his rifle, smirks. "Hell, make it 2,000. They laugh, quietly, tiredly, but with genuine relief. The night battle that unfolded miles offshore has directly saved their lives. And it is only later, days later, that they learn the American battleship that did it suffered not a single casualty. Washington's victory seems almost mythic. But every myth is born from truth. Lessons for the American Navy. A week after the battle, the after-action boards convene. Officers, engineers, gunnery specialists, and radar technicians gather to analyze the engagement. On a broad chalkboard, someone writes, "The first radar-directed battleship victory in history." Then, below it, implications for future combat. 1. Radar must guide all major night engagements. 2. Battleship formations must concentrate fire through integrated fire control. 3. Cruisers and destroyers must adopt Washington-style tracking procedures. 4. Radar training shall be mandatory for all line officers. 5. Night advantage now belongs to the U.S. Navy, exploit it relentlessly. The discussion lasts for hours. And when it ends, the Pacific Fleet is set on a new course, one that relies not on eyesight, not on instinct, but on machines, mathematics, and the cold precision of electronic warfare. From this point forward, radar is not just a tool. It is doctrine. Admiral Lee's private thoughts. Late one evening, after hundreds of messages, interviews, and technical evaluations, Admiral Willis Lee returns to his small officer's cabin aboard Washington. He sits alone at his desk, opens a worn leather notebook, and writes only one short line. "The darkness is ours now." He underlines it once. Then closes the book. He is not smiling. He is not celebrating. He is simply acknowledging a truth he has spent his entire career preparing for. Technology, properly implemented, wisely understood, can change the outcome of wars more decisively than any single ship or admiral. And last night, that truth was proven in the flash of 16-inch guns across a pitch-black sea. The men who made it possible. Beneath him, across the decks of Washington, hundreds of sailors carry on their duties. Firemen scrape carbon from boilers. Gunners clean residue from their barrels. Signalmen restring burnt-out signal lamps. Ordinary seamen repaint scorched spots on steel bulkheads. Each man, in his own way, contributed to the victory. None will have their names etched in textbooks. Most will never be interviewed, never appear in documentaries. But without them, without their discipline and training and endurance, Washington would have been just another ship in the dark. Instead, she became something else. A fortress that could see without seeing. A sword that struck without ever being seen. A pioneer of a new age of warfare. Iron Bottom Sound, the final moment. And so the night of November 15, 1942 becomes a dividing line in naval history. Before it, battles fought with searchlights, flares, and instinct. Night belonged to the Japanese. After it, battles fought with radar, electronics, and mathematical precision. Night belongs to the Americans. In 7 minutes, Washington did more than sink a battleship. She changed the future. And as the waves wash across Iron Bottom Sound, quiet now, calm, betraying nothing of the fury they once held, the legacy of that night lingers in the silence. A revolution doesn't always begin with speeches. Sometimes it begins with 9 hits in 7 minutes, fired in total darkness, by men who trusted a glowing screen more than their own eyes. Epilogue, the only one-on-one battleship kill. Throughout the entirety of World War II, only once did an American battleship meet another battleship in single combat and emerge victorious. Only once did radar guide a battleship's guns to a kill in complete darkness. Only once did a single ship rewrite the doctrines of two navies in the space of a few minutes. That moment, that ship, was USS Washington. And that night in Iron Bottom Sound remains one of the most extraordinary feats in naval warfare, forgotten by many, understood by few, but immortal to those who study the Pacific War. Because the truth of that night is simple. Washington didn't just win a battle. She proved the future had already arrived.